When Officer Daniel Whitaker ordered me out of my car, his hand hovering dangerously close to his holster, I knew this wasn't about a traffic stop anymore. The crowd that had gathered whispered my name. Judge Carter, their phones recording every second. Dispatch had already confirmed the Lexus was mine. Yet he stood there insisting I prove what he already knew. In that moment, it wasn't just about me or my car. It was about power, perception, and the line. Between law and abuse, a line. He was seconds away from crossing. The clock on his cruiser had read 7:14 p.m. when the lights first flashed in my rear view. I'd just left the courthouse. My robe still draped across my shoulders, too tired to fold it away. The streets of downtown Atlanta were cooling with the evening, shadows slipping between the brownstones and sycamores. My car, a deep blue Lexus, hummed steady under my hands. It was the one thing I allowed myself to splurge on. A reminder of years spent working 2 jobs through law school, of long nights and longer hearings. But to the man behind me, Officer Daniel Whitaker, 39 years old, white, 11 years on the force, it didn't look like hard work. To him, it looked like suspicion. I pulled smoothly to the curb beneath a flickering street lamp. No panic, no sudden moves. I'd been here before, not with this exact script, but with versions of it that always ended the same: questions about who I was, why I was here, whether what I owned could truly belong to me. My window was already halfway down when Whitaker approached. He leaned forward, hand brushing the butt of his holster, though there was no threat in the air but his own presence. "Evening, ma'am," he said, his voice low, watchful. "License and registration." I met his eyes. Calm, direct, of course. "Officer," I handed over both without hesitation. My name, Judge Naomi Carter, sat clear on the license. My registration bore the same. He frowned, scanning. "Any idea why I stopped you?" "No, officer." "Why don't you tell me?" He tapped the papers against his palm. "This vehicle matches the description of a stolen car reported earlier today. Lexus sedan, dark blue, female driver." My jaw tightened, but my voice stayed steady. "This is my car, registered in my name. You can confirm with dispatch." He didn't look convinced. He didn't even radio it in at first. Instead, he stared the way some people do when they're waiting for the mask to slip, when they believe deep down you don't belong in the seat. "You're sitting in finally." He stepped back, muttering into his radio. I watched his lips move in the side mirror, saw the dispatcher's static-filled voice buzz back through his shoulder mic. Everything matched. My license, my registration. No stolen report tied to the VENGDOT. It should have ended there, but Whitaker walked back. Slow, like each step was a choice he could still undo. He stopped at my window again. "Mind stepping out of the vehicle for me, ma'am?" My pulse didn't spike. Not visibly. But I sat straighter. "Is that a lawful order?" "Yes, ma'am." His hand twitched toward his holster again. Almost unconsciously, I raised my voice, not shouting, just loud enough for the 2 young men standing across the street with phones in their hands to hear. "Officer, you have already confirmed this is my vehicle. You are detaining me without cause." He flinched a fraction of a second, like the words cut sharper than expected. Still, pride pulled him tighter. "Ma'am, step out. We'll clear this up." A door creaked open across the block. A woman leaned on her porch rail, squinting into the scene. More footsteps, more eyes. The quiet street was waking up. I kept my gaze locked on him. "I am Judge Naomi Carter of the Fulton County Superior Court. You are detaining me illegally." One of the boys on the sidewalk whispered. She said she had judged. His phone camera tilted up, the red light blinking like a signal flare. Whitaker's stance stiffened. Cameras, a crowd. His authority wasn't unchallenged anymore. But pride or something heavier held him there. I rolled the window up a few inches. Not slamming, just separating. Turned my head forward. Hands still resting on the wheel, he paced back to his cruiser. I could see in the mirror he wasn't done. His chest rose and fell, his knuckles tapping the steering wheel like a drum beat he couldn't silence. Then he climbed out again, shutting the door harder than before, the sound cracking across the growing audience. "Ma'am," he said. Tapping the glass, I lowered it 2 more inches. "Yes, officer?" I need to ask you a few questions. You've already confirmed my license, my registration, and my identity. What else is left to ask? He stared at me. How long you had this vehicle? I tilted my head. Since last March, bought it pre-owned from the dealership. Paid in full. His eyes narrowed. Paid in full? Yes, I said, voice sharpening. Are you asking how I could afford my own car? I'm asking because it fits a description. No, I cut him off, calm but firm. You're asking because you don't believe this car belongs to me, even after confirmation. The crowd murmured louder this time. A man muttered, "She right. He fishing." Whitaker's hand flexed near his belt again, then froze when someone shouted, "Hey, officer, we recording? Keep the hands off that gun." He pulled his hand back, but not his stare. I leaned my head lightly against the window frame. You don't see me, Officer Whitaker? You see a possibility you've already decided is true. For a moment, silence stretched between us. Then another cruiser rolled up. A female officer stepped out, Hispanic, maybe mid-30s, sharp-eyed, hair pulled into a bun. She scanned the scene quickly, her gaze catching the phones, the faces, the tension in the air. "Danny," she said, low but firm as she reached his side. "What's this?" "Possible stolen vehicle," he muttered. She leaned down, saw me through the glass, and her eyebrow shot up. "That's Judge Carter." Whitaker didn't answer. The new officer exhaled, shifting her stance. "You need to let her go." The crowd picked up her words like an echo. "Let her go?" one teenager shouted. I rolled the window another inch. "Officer, I'm requesting to leave." "Am I free to go?" Whitaker clenched his jaw, but he didn't answer. The silence dragged like chains. The cameras stayed up. Every eye in that street knew the law wasn't on his side anymore, and yet he stayed planted, unwilling to back down. I knew then this wasn't. We're doing clean, This was only the beginning. Whitaker's silence was heavy, the kind that carried more weight than words ever could. He wasn't just standing there. He was making a decision. Every second that passed wasn't about protocol anymore. It was about pride. His pride. The other officer shifted closer, lowering her voice. "Danny, this isn't worth it." Dispatch cleared it. "The crowd's watching. Let it go." But he shook his head. "She's not free to go until I say so." I felt my jaw tighten, though my hands never left the wheel. This wasn't just defiance. It was escalation. An escalation in the wrong hands could turn deadly. I took a slow breath and spoke loud enough for the phones around us to catch. "Officer Whitaker, you are unlawfully detaining me. This is a violation of my constitutional rights. If you proceed, you will be held accountable, not just here, but in court." His face darkened. Accountability was the one word some officers hated more than any curse. The female officer glanced at me, then back at him. "Danny, seriously, this is Judge Carter. You know what this means?" He snapped. "I don't care who she is. Nobody's above the law." A ripple ran through the crowd. Phones shifted higher, voices rising. One man shouted, "Neither are you, officer." Another yelled, "She told you who she is." I stayed calm, but inside the weight pressed down. This wasn't about the Lexus anymore. It was about a man who couldn't back down in front of a woman who stood her ground. And then his next words made my blood run cold. "Step out of the car." "Judge," he said, hand hovering close to his holster again. The crowd erupted. "Don't you touch her. We got this on camera." "You gonna pull a gun on a judge?" I leaned forward slightly, my voice steady, deliberate. "If you attempt to remove me from this vehicle without cause, you will be committing an unlawful arrest. I will not resist, but I will pursue every remedy the law provides. And I assure you, Officer Whitaker, the law will not be kind." His lips pressed thin, but his eyes, those eyes burned with a mix of fear and stubbornness. He was trapped between the badge he wore and the cameras capturing every breath he took. And then salvation. A black SUV turned the corner, moving fast but controlled. Pulling up behind the cruisers, out stepped Chief Daniels, the precinct commander. I knew him by sight. He'd testified in my courtroom more than once. His presence shifted the entire street in an instant. "Whitaker?" Daniels barked, striding forward. "What the hell is this?" Whitaker stiffened. "Possible stolen vehicle, sir. Dispatch cleared it 10 minutes ago." "And that's Judge Carter." Daniels' voice cracked like thunder. The crowd murmured. Louder vindication. Rolling like a wave. "Daniels, stepped directly between us, his back to me, his fury aimed squarely at his officer. "You're dismissed from this stop. Now get back in your cruiser." For a second, I thought Whitaker might argue. His jaw clenched, his eyes darted from me to the crowd to his chief, but the weight of the moment finally crushed him. With a sharp turn, he stalked back to his cruiser, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Daniels turned, his voice softer. "No. Judge Carter, I am so sorry. This never should have happened." I nodded once, composed. "Chief, I appreciate your intervention, but understand this is not the end of it." The crowd cheered then, their phones catching every word. When I finally pulled away, the streetlights blinking across my windshield, I knew this night would follow me far beyond this block. It wasn't about the stop. It was about the silence if I let it slide. And I had no intention of being silent. The next morning, my chambers were flooded with calls journalists, colleagues, community leaders. The video had already gone viral overnight. Millions of views. The headline burned across every platform. Black judge accused of stealing her own car by white officer. By noon, I received an official statement from the department. "We are conducting an internal investigation," but I'd been in law long enough to know what those words often meant. Delay, deflect, deny. Not this time. That evening, I filed a formal complaint against Officer Whitaker. Harassment, unlawful detention, abuse of authority. I attached not just my own testimony, but links to the videos. Time-stamped, irrefutable, within a week. The pressure was too great to contain. Civil rights groups demanded his suspension. Local news stations replayed the footage on loop. Editorials asked how many other stops like this had gone unrecorded. And then came the hearing. It was a surreal reversal, me walking into a courtroom not to preside but to testify. The gallery was packed. Lawyers, reporters, activists, even some of the young men from the sidewalk that night. Whitaker sat at the defense table, his uniform traded for a suit that hung stiff on his shoulders. His lawyer whispered in his ear, but his eyes kept darting toward me, as if I'd somehow betrayed him simply by refusing to bow when the time came. I stood, swore the oath, and told the truth. Every detail, every pause, every word I had spoken, and every unlawful demand he had made. The courtroom was silent, save for the scratching of pens and the clicking of keyboards. When the videos were played, the silence deepened. His voice sharp and insistent, my replies calm and firm. The crowd shouting. The holster, his hand, the threat of what might have been. By the end, there was no argument left to make. The disciplinary board ruled swiftly. Officer Daniel Whitaker was suspended without pay pending termination. But the consequences didn't end there. The city announced mandatory retraining for all officers, focused on implicit bias and constitutional limits of authority. Policy reforms followed. Small steps, maybe, but steps nonetheless. As for me, I returned to my bench. My robe settled across my shoulders once more, heavier now, but with purpose, because I knew the next case, the next defendant, the next citizen who walked through my courtroom doors they deserved. A judge who understood what it felt like to be seen as less than what you are. And when my gavel struck wood that morning, I felt the echo not just in the room, but in the streets outside, because justice, when demanded, doesn't just belong to one person. It belongs to us all.